health and homage. So, without further ado, we have already the recitation of the Pali Sutra. After his enlightenment, perfect enlightenment, Buddha, before long, in Saranath, the great sacred site of Saranath, he turned the first wheel of Dharma on the Four Noble Truths and others which form the foundation of the teaching of the Buddha. And so this is followed in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, Cambodia, Laos, and also China, Tibet, Korea. All of these, the followers of the Buddha in these different places follow the same Vinaya. The practice of Vinaya is shared. The Pratimoksha Sutra, the Self-Individual Liberation Sutra, may be slightly different because of different orders, such as the Vinaya tradition, the monastic discipline tradition that the Tibetans follow is Mula Sarvastivada tradition, which was passed down through Master Nagarjuna and others. And then in the Pali tradition, they follow the Theravada tradition. In these Pali countries, they follow the Theravada tradition. In the Mula Sarvastivada tradition, we have through 253 precepts or vows that the fully ordained monks follow. There may be a slight difference in the minor vows. And so Buddhism from India spread to the Sanskrit tradition, spread from India to China, from there to Vietnam, Korea, and it spread to Vietnam, Korea, and Japan. And so with regard to the Sanskrit tradition, the Buddha gave the teaching at the Vulture Peak Mountain for those who are of very sharp faculty. So those with sharp faculty who follow on the basis of reason were given this teaching on the perfection of wisdom. So we had the Chinese Dhamma brothers and sisters reciting the Heart Sutra in Sanskrit. And so many of the countries like China in Asia are followers of the Sanskrit tradition. So we can say that almost the whole of Asia, the Buddha Dharma has spread the whole of Asia. So, but today, even in the Western countries, particularly educated people and scientists, with regard to the Sanskrit tradition, particularly focusing on the system of emotions, psychology, and logic. So without having to talk about liberation or past and future lives, but on the basis of logical reason to prove past and the authenticity or to verify the truth of the teaching. Whereas in the theistic religious traditions in the West, there is this belief and faith in the God as a creator, whereas in India there are those spiritual or the philosophical systems which didn't have any belief in a creator God. And so the Nalanda tradition, the Indian tradition, and particularly the Nalanda tradition, which follow logical approach, logical reasoning, and also which consists of teachings pertaining to quantum, their concept similar to quantum physics. is found in this Nalanda tradition. And so even after over 2,550 years after the Buddha passed away, today even these scientists, educated people are paying attention and have keen interest in learning from psychology, Buddhism, the Nalanda tradition. And so in many of the countries around the world today, there are people who take interest in the tradition of Buddhism. So we as Buddhists are practitioners of Buddhism traditionally. So it's very important for us as traditional Buddhists to generate or have gain faith in the teaching of the Buddha through understanding the teaching. In the Haribhadra's commentary called the Sphutarth, the clear meaning commentary, he mentions the two types of followers of the teaching of the Buddha. One who follows on the basis of reason. They are called the sharp faculty ones, the intelligent followers, and the not so intelligent ones who follow on the basis of faith. And so the former investigate into the nature of the causes which bring about which are called the mothers, which bring about the results of the Shravaka, Prajaka Buddha, Bodhisattvas, and Buddha, Arya beings. And so by understanding the nature, the true nature of these, the path, they understand whether these the path of the Buddha and so forth are worth pay our faith or not. So by using reasoning and logic, as it is taught in the Panchaparamita Sutras, that everything is without any essential identity in and of themselves. So understanding such nature, and so when the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, the shortcomings of samsara and the advantages of attaining nirvana. So through this one could understand that if there is a possibility to overcome the afflictive emotions and so forth and attain nirvana, however strong and intense our negative emotions, the destructive emotions may be, they don't have any the sound basis and support from valid knowledge. And therefore, we all should understand the two truths. As quantum physics also says, there is an appearance level of understanding things and the deeper truth or reality. And so without satisfying, feeling content with the appearance. And therefore the Buddha, after his enlightenment, right after his enlightenment, he said, I have found this nectar-like dharma, which is profound, peaceful, without elaboration, unconditioned and luminous or clear light. And so the profundity and peacefulness refers to the teaching, is a reference I take to be a reference to the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Four Noble Truths. And then the free of elaboration, I take it to refer to the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, which teaches emptiness in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which is called the object clear light as well, emptiness, which is the absence of independent existence. And then unconditioned luminosity refers to, I take it to refer to that of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the clear light mind is taught. The clear light mind is taught in the aspect of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma called Tathagata Garbha Sutra and others. And this is also called the essence of Tathagata, the Buddha nature that we all have. And so this also is called the subjective clear light mind. And regarding the complete explanation of this mind, the luminous subjective clear light, it is taught in the highest Yoga Tantra. There is the classification of mind into the gross and subtle level of minds. And so the subtlest, innermost subtle mind is that clear light mind, which goes from here until enlightenment. And therefore the Buddha said, I have found this peaceful, profound, peaceful Dharma, the nectar-like Dharma, which is profound, peaceful, free of elaborations, luminous and unconditioned. And the Buddha also has said that the sages do not wash away the sins of the non-virtuous or unwholesome actions of beings, nor do they pick out or remove the suffering of sentient beings with their hands, nor do they transfer their own realization to others. And so how do the Buddhas help? After having gone through the path for over countless eons, and having gone through the purification of negativities, defilements, and also the accumulation of merit, how do the Buddhas help? So he said, the Buddha said, the Buddhas cannot wash away the sins or the unwholesome actions of sentient beings. And nor the Buddhas can remove the suffering of sentient beings with their hands. Neither do the Buddhas transfer their own realization to others. We cannot, even if we plead to the Buddha to gift us with his realization, there is no way he could do that for us. But by teaching the reality of how things are, the Buddhas or the sages lead beings to liberation. So by seeing the Buddha's body, so we have a tendency, the way we relate ourselves to the Buddha, we have a tendency to, as if seek some kind of a blessing from the Buddhas to overcome our defilements, negativities, and so forth. That's not the way the Buddhas can help us. Whereas every sentient being, from the small insects like ants and down to the small insects like ants, do not want suffering but want happiness. So the other sentient beings, the birds and so forth, do not have the same kind of language and the brain like us as human beings. Though we are all same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, all sentient beings, infinite number of sentient beings, most of them more or less find joy, happiness, or blissful, pleasant experiences on the basis of sensorial experience. On this earth, sentient beings have evolved since some tens of millions of years. So hundreds of millions of years have gone by since sentient beings evolved on this earth. But there is none who has the same kind of brain like human beings. So we as human beings have this special brain. So all the religious traditions, of course, talk about seeking refuge in their different gods. The theistic religions mainly focus on praying to God for our happiness and so forth, whereas the all teachings, of course, all religious traditions teach that of love and compassion. So even the theistic religious traditions also have that message for us. Whereas in India, the non-theistic Sankhya school, Jainism and Buddhism, these three do not assert a creator God as such. So the Buddha himself has said that you are your own master, who else will be your master? So therefore, it is up to you whether you to overcome suffering or not is up to you. So the Buddhism teaches, gives a whole lot of teachings about transforming our mind. There are a lot of teachings on transforming and training our mind. So to achieve happiness and overcome suffering is mainly should be done on the basis of the mind. So the animals, of course, can try to avoid physical pain when they face danger to their body and so forth. Whereas as human beings, we are able to think about what we are going to do in the future and plan things. So we have this, we can make long-term plans and so forth. So why suffering happens is because of unruly mind, undisciplined mind that we have. In the prayer that the Chinese said, may the three poisons be eliminated. So this is a very powerful prayer. The first line says, may the three poisons be eliminated. How the means to overcome that, to eliminate that, is by wisdom. And the prayer says, may the light of wisdom be ablaze or shine forth. So by developing this light of wisdom within ourselves, so by thinking about the varieties of phenomena, we develop that of compassion, bodhicitta, and by developing wisdom, understanding how things are, we develop the wisdom to see reality and truth. And so this wisdom of realizing emptiness is something which even those who aspire to their own liberation for themselves alone are develop. Whereas when this is combined with bodhicitta, the wisdom of emptiness, combined with bodhicitta, then you attain that of Buddhahood. And so you follow, to attain that, you follow the Bodhisattva path. And therefore, in the prayer, it says, may all obstacles be, may we get rid of all obstacles, and may we engage in the Bodhisattva practices. So there are many people who come to from the Western countries, who take interest in Buddhism. And so because they use their intelligence, their intellect, therefore they begin to find interest in the teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha himself has prophesied that his teaching will spread from India to its north, which refers to Tibet, and from there to the north, which refers to Mongolia. So I will begin to see that we also could say that the Buddhism can spread from Tibet to its south, and then from there to other countries. So to its south means India. So it has come back to India, and then from here it spreads to other parts of the world. And so the essence of the teaching is to overcome our undisciplined mind. Because of our attachment and anger and hatred, we cause ourselves lots of problems. And so these negative emotions, of course, cannot be overcome through drugs, by taking drugs. It may help, the drugs may help to make the unhappy mind a little bit subsided, but it cannot uproot this. And so in India there has been the tradition of non-violence, ahimsa, and compassion. So non-violence or harming others comes through hatred or anger, and therefore there is need for compassion, which counters this unruly mind anger. So in India, we usually call the Tirthikas, the forders, or non-Buddhist traditions. In other words, even in their tradition, there has been the practice of single-pointed mind, calm abiding, and then vipassana, in special insight meditation. It has been there in India for over 3,000 years. So as I mentioned about the Sankhya school, the non-theistic Sankhya school says that we should actually make change within ourselves by changing our mind, transforming our mind. And so this is also said by the Jains and Buddhists. So how do we transform our mind? Our mind, which is afflicted by or under the influence of our destructive emotions, we should know which type of mind disturbs our peace of mind as soon as they arise in us, and what are their countermeasures, counter forces. And so we should strengthen those countermeasures, counterforce to the negative emotions, and then eliminate the destructive emotions in that way. And so this is how we go about with training the mind in the Indian tradition. So the Buddha has said that as long as we remain undisciplined in our mind remains undisciplined, there will be suffering and disturbance of the peace of mind. And when you go deeper into the destructive emotions, with regard to destructive emotions, what causes all these destructive emotions is this perception or the conception where we perceive or conceive things to have some kind of independent, solid existence. And so even quantum physics talks about this, the disparity between appearance and the reality. So when we hold on to some kind of a solidity and in the appearance in the sense that the things appear as if they have some kind of independent existence, when we hold on to that kind of appearance, then the other destructive emotions arise in us. So because of this conception of holding on to the appearance of how things appear to us. And so the Master Nagarjuna says, through the elimination of karma and afflictions, there is liberation. Karma and afflictions arise through mental constructs. So inappropriate mentation, and that in turn arises because of our holding on to some kind of a true existence in things and beings. That's how things and beings appear to us, and we cling on to that. And because of that, the misapprehension or the exaggerated outlook arise in us. And so Master Nagarjuna also says our attachment, anger and confusion arises through this exaggerated outlook, and that in turn arises through the clinging to the appearance of things having some kind of an independent existence. And therefore, to counter this deep ignorance within ourselves, this misconception of reality, the Buddha taught emptiness, as we find in the Heart Sutra also. Form is empty, which doesn't mean that form does not exist at all, but it goes on to say emptiness is form. And so form exists, but not the way they appear, it appears to us as if it has some kind of independent existence. So anything that you pick does not stand alone as self-contained existence. And so whatever there is, form and so forth, of course do exist. But when you try to find its identity within that whole, there is nothing that you can pinpoint as being that form or any other external objects. We can talk about the three times, but when you go deeper into it, there's nothing that we can pinpoint or point our finger at as being the present as well. And so things which are changing moment by moment, we cannot find something that we can say this is the present moment when we try to analyze that. And similarly it is the case with the mind. We can talk about the mind in terms of its temporal moments, temporal extension, but you cannot actually pinpoint something as being the mind when you try to go into each moment and its moment, within one moment, its parts and so forth. And therefore, when we realize that the negative emotions arise because of our exaggerated outlook, which is in turn rooted in this misconception of reality, the total misconception of reality. Then when you understand that things do not exist the way they appear to us, it helps to reduce this clinging. And so form is empty, emptiness is form. And these two, emptiness and the form and its emptiness, are of the same essence, but distinct conceptually. So form does not exist in itself or by itself independently, but it is made up of different causes and conditions and its parts. And so form is empty, and apart from being absent of any intrinsic existence, form cannot have its existence. Therefore, emptiness is form. And in Buddha Palita, there is this statement where Buddha Palita says, if things were to have any essence in and of themselves, then what is the need for dependent designation? So, dependent arising and existing by its own essence are contradictory. And therefore, the Heart Sutra says, emptiness is not other than form, and form too is not other than emptiness. And therefore, based on the wisdom, relying on the wisdom realizing emptiness of inherent existence, that the Buddhas of the past, present, future become and fully enlightened. So the past Buddhas have become enlightened through meditation on this emptiness of inherent existence, and the future Buddhas will also become enlightened relying on it, and the present Buddhas also have relied on it and become enlightened. So how do we go about with this practice? And so that the path that leads to that kind of full enlightenment of Buddhahood, it is mentioned, or the Heart Sutra mantra, Tatyatha Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhiswaha, is a reference to this five-tiered path, which says go beyond, go perfectly beyond, and lay the foundation in Bodhi. So, when you understand that things have no inherent existence, and also that the very nature of the mind itself is luminous and clear light, and you can see that the defilements are not in the intrinsic nature of the mind, and therefore Buddhahood is, and enlightenment is possible. And so you go, in order to reach that enlightenment, full enlightenment of Buddhahood, you go through the five-tiered path, beginning with the path of accumulation, where within the context of the Bodhisattva path, you first cultivate and develop this genuine bodhicitta, and then go on into the path of preparation, where you develop the vipassana, the union of vipassana and the shamatha, calm abiding, and focused on emptiness, and then your mind becomes more and more purified of the negativities, and then you reach the path of seeing.